Hey all, thanks for tuning in to yet another SIGcast. This is part 2 of the fall of the Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Union. In the last episode, we talked about the de-Stalinization policies of Nikita Khrushchev, including Gosplan, only to be undone in the Brezhnev era, only to be reintroduced in the 1980s to deal with the tremendous strain of the Soviet economy was under by none other than Mikhail Gorbachev. So let's pick up there and talk about the impact of Gorby's reforms. His intention was to make the Eastern Bloc more efficient, to try to avoid the use of Soviet force, and include more parties in elected government. In other words, his goal was to become more efficient. But its actual impact? It gave Eastern European countries the opportunity to reform their own governments and ultimately remove pro-Soviet communist leaders, as we'll see that transpire. Previously, when changes or threats to the Soviet or pro-Soviet governments and regimes arose, the Soviet Union typically sent in military and the Red Army to reverse the changes or put down revolts. Examples of this would be in Hungary in 1956, as well as Prague Spring in 1968 in Czechoslovakia. However, with Glasnost, no Soviet backup would arrive, and communist governments were on their own if they wanted to maintain power. And consequently, in 1988 and 1989, Eastern Bloc countries began to break free. The best example of this was the reemergence of the Solidarity movement in Poland, which was a banned anti-communist union that functioned as a political party. It was outlawed. Well, it came back. With no Soviet support, Solidarity, non-communist, emerged from its underground operations to attempt to win votes for places in the Polish government. Remember, the majority of these members of this party were Catholic, thus the Catholic Church actually funded their efforts. And as a result, the Solidarity won a sweeping victory, and the pro-Soviet government, with no aid from the Soviets, was forced to step down and flee. Hungary soon followed in removing a pro-Soviet government, as well as Czechoslovakia, and the revolutions with TV coverage spread quickly. When the pro-Soviet East German government refused to step down, East Germans simply left East Germany by the thousands through Hungary and Czechoslovakia. Here's an example of the Solidarity movement in Poland. There's an example of refugees fleeing East Germans, probably held up in either Czechoslovakia and Hungary. So while the communist East German government initially attempted to use police force to maintain control, Gorbachev openly opposed it. And with no backup, East German government resigned, and Egon Krenz, the leader, suddenly opened the border on November 9th, 1989. The notable exception to this movement was Romania, whose government attempted to hold their power violently until their dictator, Nicolae Ceausescu, was captured and executed. I apologize, I botched the pronunciation. It's Ceausescu. Then in 1990, with the approval of the United States, Britain, France, and the USSR, Germany was reunited, and it felt so good. With the assurance, they would be recognizing Poland's borders, and that's exactly what they did. So no more East Germany, West Germany, it's just Germany. And the spirit of separation continued, and in 1991, the Soviet Union actually dissolved. And countries like Ukraine, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania all received their independence. Here's pictures of the Berlin Wall coming down. People crossing the Berlin Wall. And then one other term to remember, the Velvet Revolution, which was a revolution that led to the death of communism in 1989 in Czechoslovakia. The ousting communist bosses were ousted in only 10 days. And it grew out of popular demonstrations led by, yet again, students and intellectuals, and a dissident playwright who was exiled in 1968 after Prague Spring named Václav Havel. So again, different outcome than the Prague Spring, but a bittersweet moment in the history of Czechoslovakia. We've already talked about Romania, and what we need to do now is talk about, while other countries had transitional economic problems, none rivaled the bloody ethnic fighting after the split of Yugoslavia and the downfall of communism. By the late 1980s, Croatia and Slovenia, which were the most developed, openly opposed many of the Serbian economic policies. The result was independence in 1990 and 91 by Croatia, Slovenia, Macedonia, and then Bosnia-Herzegovina, with many Serbs settled within their borders. Sounds familiar. If you remember, this is kind of what happened with Serbs living in Bosnia when the Archduke was assassinated in July of 1914. With Yugoslavian Serbian support, these ethnic groups or ethnicities battled endlessly over border disputes, and many Muslims in Bosnia and Albanians in Kosovo were killed. Many accused this of being ethnic cleansing, kind of like the Armenian genocide, by Serbian forces. And attempts to maintain communist control and drive out non-Serbs, mostly Albanians, resulted in UN action in 1995, and then again in Kosovo in 1999 with bombings, and the eventual downfall of Europe's last communist country in 2000 with Slobodan Milosevic. Thanks for tuning in. This, combined with part 1, will be quizzed in the next lesson.